Alright guys, we're going to get started here. I'm Andrew, I'm the president. Thank you guys for coming. This is Mr. Poley. He's the Senior VP of Legal and General for minor league baseball. He came from Tampa. If you guys have questions, go ahead, raise your hand if you have a question, or wait till the end. So, we're yours.
Thank you. He's correct. I'm Scott Poley. Been with minor league baseball since 2000. And anyone in here know when minor league baseball was founded? Any guesses?
You mean as minor league baseball?
As an entity, yep.
What else? BOB, 1930s?
Earlier, 1901.
Okay.
Minor league baseball was organized in 1901 when the National Association of Professional Baseball Leagues was formed in Chicago. It was just a coming together of a bunch of minor leagues to lay out some common rules as to what they would do with player contracts and things like that. Because up until that point, a team would sign a player, and another team, somewhere nearby would say, "Oh, that's a good player. We'll offer him $2 more to skip out on his contract with that team and come play for our team." So that's sort of how minor league baseball was originally formed. We're based in St. Petersburg. We have about 45 employees in the office. We also employ 220 umpires to umpire all the games in the minor leagues. And that was actually how I came to work for the organization in 1999-2000. I was working as a labor lawyer in Cincinnati, and the minor league umpires unionized. And I got an email from a friend of mine who worked at another law firm in Cincinnati, and this law firm did some work for minor league baseball. And he said, the general counsel of minor league baseball is leaving. That sounds like a job you'd like. So, I thought to myself, yeah, I'd love to work in sports, but never thought it would actually happen. So I, called up the partner going to a little bit in town and said, "Hey, I'm interested," thinking nothing's ever going to come of this. He said, "Send your resume over." So they sent it down to minor league baseball in Florida. I was working in Cincinnati. And they said, "Sure, come on down for an interview." So my thought was, well, nothing's going to come of this, but at least I'm getting a trip to Florida out of it. It was July, so it wasn't the best timing. As I found out when I walked out of my hotel room the morning of the interview, and I had glasses on instead of contacts, and they instantly became covered in moisture. And I said to myself, well, that's not usual. And then I almost stepped on about 5 lizards that ran in front of me on the sidewalk. But I went over for the interview, and it turned out that I was the only labor lawyer in the applicant pool. And they had this big issue with the umpires unionizing. They needed somebody to come in and run the union election, and if it was successful, negotiate the first collective bargaining agreement with the umpires. So it was a matter of good timing, networking. One of my buddies from law school was the one who put me onto the job to find out about it in the first place, and then just having skills that matched up for the job at the time. So that's a little just background about me and how I came to the position. And I'll give you some thoughts later on sort of how you might work your way into sports in a little bit. But just a little bit more about the organization first. We have 19 leagues and about 250 teams that we oversee. That includes teams in the Dominican, Mexico, and until this past season, Venezuela. Finally, the Cubs, I think, were the team that pulled out of Venezuela. We had 4 teams down there until this year. And it's just such a bad situation politically that the Cubs didn't want to be down there anymore. So we may go back to Venezuela. It's a great area. And hopefully they get their political situation straightened out. But we oversee all those teams. And those are all the teams from rookie level, guys straight out of high school and college who start at professional level, who play in the Arizona League or the Gulf Coast League, which is just spring training complexes, no fans. They play at noon in the summer in Florida. So, how about that? Those guys are pretty motivated to get out of the Gulf Coast so they can move up. After that, they move up to the short season leagues like the Appalachian League and the Northwest League and the Pioneer League, and then the full season leagues, low A, high A, double A, triple A. And all those guys are employed by major league teams. The ones in the U.S., the foreign teams, some of those have major league ties, but some of those, like the Mexican League, all scout and sign their own players. So, if the Mexican League has a good player, maybe the Braves will call that Mexican League team up and say, hey, we'd like to purchase the contract of so-and-so, and they work out a deal to do that. But most of the rest of the players in the minor leagues are all already under contract to a major league team that either drafted them or signed them as a free agent. So that's, generally our structure. We have a number of companies under our umbrella. So you might say, well, what does minor league baseball do? We have a marketing arm called Professional Baseball Promotion Corporation. And that's the for-profit entity that oversees licensing and some marketing stuff. So when you think hats, t-shirts, bobbleheads, giant foam fingers, all those things are under our promo corporation. Sort of similar to NFL properties. Because the main entity is a not-for-profit entity, they have to create a for-profit entity to do that sort of for-profit type work. The main minor league baseball, we're just a membership organization. We're like a union or the Honey Growers of America or something. It's just a trade association. We also have an internet arm called Burco, Baseball Internet Rights Company, which has a contract with Major League Baseball Advanced Media, which also has an arm called BAM Tech, which you may have seen. Disney bought a third of recently, a month or two ago. So we work closely with them on all the digital things we do. We have an entity called Professional Baseball Umpire Corporation that, probably not surprisingly, employs all the umpires. And then we have a handful of umpire supervisors who travel around the country to evaluate the umpires who are working all the games, because a lot of people don't know that the umpires working at our games are moving up through the baseball system just like the players are. So umpire starts at rookie level and moves up to short season A, double A, triple A, just like the players do. Which can be good and bad, because some of those players and umpires get to know each other through the years. And it's one of the reasons we require the home team to put the visiting team and the umpires up at different hotels, just in case. But we have, at any given time, about 220, 230 umpires working for us. Once they get to AAA, Major League Baseball has an agreement with us where if Major League umpires are hurt or on vacation or absent for some other reason, they can pull our umpires from AAA and they fill in the major leagues, and Major League Baseball supervisors will grade their performance. And if they do well, they can get hired in the off season or during the season for a full-time Major League Baseball umpiring job. We have a contract with Major League Baseball called the Professional Baseball Agreement. It comes up for negotiation every now and then. The current one runs through 2020. And under that agreement, Major League Baseball agrees to supply players to 160 minor league teams. So that's our main benefit of that relationship with Major League Baseball. Because Major League Baseball spends about $500 million a year on player salaries and bonuses. The average career of a player is about 3 years, and the average signing bonus of a player who's drafted is about $250,000. And the average signing bonus, if you include the players who are undrafted, is about $200,000. So, but players, will either move up the system or wash out pretty quick on average. What do we give Major League Baseball in exchange for them supplying the players? One of the things is what's called a ticket assessment. So we give a portion of our ticket sales revenue to Major League Baseball every year. For 2017, it will be 7.5% of our ticket revenue. The amount ends up varying a little bit, but in the past it's been a payment of $20 we agreed to maintain certain standards for all of our minor league facilities. Back in 1991, Major League Baseball negotiators told us, okay, if we're going to agree to guarantee players for a certain number of your teams, we need to know that those players aren't going to be playing in, crappy stadiums and, slipping on broken concrete steps in the dugout and that sort of stuff. So we agreed to certain facility standards, and Major League Baseball has an architectural firm that they contract with who travels around the country to all the minor league parks and inspects them to make sure that our parks are meeting standards, and if we have an issue, then we follow up with the team owner and general manager to make sure they get it corrected. Just broadly speaking, what are some big issues facing minor league baseball? You may have seen there's minor league players filed a lawsuit out in California called SENE, S-E-N-N-E, where they claim violations of minimum wage and things like that. The major league teams, some were dismissed, but the latest ruling was they won against the players, and players wanted to be a collective action, like a class action. But collective action is a little different. It's a labor law term. The collective group was not certified because there wasn't enough similarity, although the players have been granted a rehearing on that question, so it's still a little up in the air. From the major league team side, they've all said, look, the baseball setting is not one where anyone has ever thought that standard labor law rules apply, because these people are professionals. They're like ballerinas or concert pianists who practice all the time, not because anyone's telling you have to practice all the time, it's because if you want to be really good and reach the top of your profession, that's what you do to get better. So it's an interesting question, but if Major League Baseball were to lose, our concern is that there would be an adverse effect on how many teams they want to support. Major League Baseball might say, heck with it, we're going to be like the NFL and the NBA, and just let our players develop longer in college. We don't have to pay them a thing, as opposed to the current system where Major League Baseball has taken on all that support. So that's something that we are watching closely. Some of the players' claims in the lawsuit that have been deposed have been a little on the crazy side. They said, well, I think we ought to get paid for napping because we need to stay in good shape. I think we ought to be paid for grocery shopping because the trainer gave me this specific list of healthy foods I would shop for. So there's a fair amount of overreach on the plaintiff side. And for the most part, these are all guys who aren't in the system anymore, who are just looking for a payday. So, but it's something we're watching closely. Broad trends. Andrew asked me earlier, what do I see as the biggest long-term issue for minor league baseball? And I told him it's broadening the fan base. One, engaging young people of all sorts who haven't been interested in baseball as much as previous generations. Getting them engaged, getting them out to the ballpark to see how much fun they can have, and also just demographically broadening who we market to. 40% of minor league players are Latin American, and it's a huge untapped group of people to market to, because they have so much in common. They have those players go out and do all sorts of community events and really engage Latin influenced communities, and we've done not nearly what we can do long term on that. So things like that, just making sure that our employees and our fans reflect the communities better, in addition to getting the people to come out and say, hey, baseball's fun. We have lots of places where teams have rock walls and pools and bounce houses, and we did some polling probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and we said, as people were leaving the stadium, we'd ask them 2 or 3 questions, and then just see what the answers were. And one of the questions was, who won the game? And over 50% of the people had no idea. and we took that as a win, because people all came out and had fun, drank beer, and watched their kid flop around on the playground, and occasionally would turn around when the crowd made a bunch of noise, and that was it. But just make it something where people think, how do I want to spend my entertainment dollar? I can go sit in the movie theater and pay $12 for popcorn, or go let my kids run around outside at the minor league baseball game. That's sort of broadly how we think about it, because of major league teams controlling all the players. If you own a minor league team in Kissimmee, you have no control over the players that the Atlanta Braves send you. So the Atlanta Braves might send you their hotshot prospect, and he might not get a hit for the entire month of April, and your team might be 3-22. So all the minor league teams control is what happens off the field. So that's why the focus is on all the other family entertainment, because they don't control what goes on in the field. So you might get a great team that wins a bunch of games, or you might get a terrible team. You just never know. So it becomes more about entertainment. So people ask me, well, I want to be a general manager for a minor league team, and because I want to move players around and do this sort of stuff. And the minor league general managers don't do that. Minor league general managers make sure that the patch on the bounce house is down before the crowd gets there at 6:30. So that's one of the things that's a little bit different. Our minor league teams, unless you're owned by a major league team, you don't have a lot of involvement in the player development side, which is something to keep in mind about the organization. Any questions so far? Yeah.
Do you have any contact with sports agents and whatnot for minor league players?
We have some. It depends on what the issue is. Occasionally, if there's a really bad disciplinary situation, sometimes want a player to, for instance, we've got a big sponsorship with Esurance, the online insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to have a couple of players, Dansby Swanson, a couple other players be spokespeople for that campaign. So we reached out to their agent and arranged for a contract for them to send out a few tweets about them and insurance and things like that.
Cool.
So occasionally, that's mostly when we come in contact with agents, because on all the negotiating of their main player contract, all that's handled by the major league club, either the player operations side or the legal side of the major league club.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So a question. You know how like with the NBA and the NFL, they have like really good college systems where they're televised all the time. You have an idea who's coming up, so it keeps you more engaged. But with like the NHL and Major League Baseball, other than Bryce Harper when I was in Vegas watching him in college, you have no idea who to care about or what to do until you see him, like Mike Trout maybe doing something. It just seems like baseball needs to do something to get college or minor league games televised to kind of pull the fans in more by seeing them on TV. Is there any kind of thought going into that, of maybe trying to make that?
There's been a little of that, a little movement that direction. One of the things they've done is they've made the Major League Baseball draft more of a big deal. Televised it and talked about the players, trying to make it a little bit more like the NFL draft or one of those drafts that have a lot of publicity. But it's still hard because it's a bunch of kids coming out of high school for the most part who nobody's ever heard of. But they are trying to highlight different hotshot prospects here and there. That's one spot where I think there's a good opportunity to do things online, more online, publicity that you can show. We have 160 teams, so we have way more games to show and way more highlights. So you talk to somebody like an ESPN3, their online channel, and that's someplace, there's all these channels online looking for content. You can do more with something like that. So those are the kind of things we're looking at to create another outlet to get more publicity. But for the most part, if you're the Marlins or the Rays or whoever, you want all the ratings for your games on your channel. So you're not gonna say, let's put the Durham Bulls game on.
Well, what I was thinking is like, even if they set up like a better college system, because for example, college hockey, like if I was trying to find a Division I tournament, you don't even know what's going on half the time.
Right.
But like for the Marlins, I think if people were to follow players in college and then they were to draft those teams, you might be more inclined to like those players from college and then follow those teams. You know, it might be better for business for the Marlins themselves, but it's just a tough thing, you know, with so many things going on.
And the other thing that's hard is, you know, each major league team has so many minor league players, and out of, you know, 6 teams of 30 players, maybe there's 15 who are real prospects, because there's so much turnover too. So it's one of those things where, you know, you get to know some players on a team, and like that, they've washed out, and there's a whole new set in. So that's the other thing you're fighting against. But I think they have done a better job, like with the MLB Network and some of those channels, doing segments on focusing on some top prospects and doing, you know, live, you know, look-ins at some hotshot player, you know, playing in Trenton or somewhere like that. So we work with the MLB Network to do stuff like that too. But usually it's when, you know, A-Rod's back doing a rehab assignment. That's when they want to broadcast the game.
FSN's been doing that with minor league players for the Rays.
Okay.
They'll do like spots on specific
Yeah,
players.
they do one that's pretty good. I think it's called Down on the Farm or something
Yeah,
like that.
they do the fishing one too, but that's usually
Yes.
with major league guys. But they've actually done reports with some of the minor league guys that started at the Stone Crabs in Port Charlotte
Right.
and made it through Montgomery, and then to Durham, and then to the actual
So
Rays.
if you've not been to the stadium in Port Charlotte where the Rays have spring training, that's also the home of the Port Charlotte Stone Crabs.
Yep.
They have a fabulous walking deck that goes all the way around the concourse. They have the best children's play area of any minor league team I've been to.
Go Port
And
Charlotte.
you can get Chick-fil-A sandwiches there.
Yep. But you have to bring your sauce with you.
So,
you
yes,
can't
correct.
There's like a Heinz licensing agreement, so you have to. You can't
So
have.
this is how we judge ballpark.
It's a great ballpark.
Right.
I love it.
Yes.
What do you do for any incoming players that may have a hard time speaking English?
It's actually, Major League Baseball has some very good things in place, trying to help players get acclimated. So they have, you know, basic English courses. The other thing that you might not think of is nutrition courses. You know, because a lot of the guys, you know, haven't necessarily eaten real healthy and don't have an understanding of what they need to do to eat healthy. So, you know, they teach them, you know, what to look for when you go to the store to buy your groceries. They are very focused on the post-game spreads that they put out for the teams and to have healthy foods. And the other nice thing is in a lot of the small towns where they start out, like, you know, Appalachian towns, you know, Pulaski, Virginia, places like that, there's host families who, you know, give them, you know, sort of a stable, you know, place where they can, you know, just let their hair down and, you know, feel like they've got a good base to work from. So it's a pretty good setup that they have. The other thing is a lot of those small cities around the country, there'll be dentists who'll give free dental care. There's this whole amazing network of people out there to support players who are starting out, which in the case of a lot of the Latin players is, you know, vitally important. Yeah.
What about from the financial aspect? I know there's been a major issue with all these players that end up broke in the end because they don't have that knowledge. Has baseball?
Yeah, that's part of the education process, because you've seen, like, college football players, a lot of them have, you know, hooked up with guys like Hank Black who, you know, steal all the money just because they don't know any better. So that financial planning piece, there's a team of, you know, recommended financial people who are part of that network that educates the players when they're starting out.
In the minors?
Yes. Especially the guys who get the bigger signing bonuses. You know, 'cause suddenly you're a high school kid, and the next thing you know, you have $3 million. And, you know, a lot of guys blow that. And then, you know, 2 seasons down the road, they blow out their shoulder and they can't play anymore. Hopefully they've put that away. But good questions. Yeah.
Are they the independent leagues considered like your competitor, or are you guys like affiliate with them in some?
I mean, they're sort of competitor. It's one of those things where we don't have enough teams for all the players. And the independent leagues are a great place for, you know, the guy who blows out his shoulder. Maybe he's the Giants and he blows he comes back and he pitches for one of those independent teams, and if he can, you know.
Can like the pro team call him back up from the independent league?
No, he's a free agent when he's with the independent team, so they can sign him. So what they do is they buy him from the independent team. So they serve a place for guys who either weren't drafted or who've been cut from a major league organization to keep working on their skills. And it's not real often, but every once in a while, one of those guys will get a contract and make the majors. Andrew was talking about his friend who just got called up by the Red Sox, who started out in pinball. But there's a little bit of competition, just in the sense of when a city's talking about building a stadium, sometimes we'll talk to them about, hey, build a stadium for us, and sometimes the independent league will say, hey, build a stadium for us. But the prospect of getting a current major league player doing a rehab assignment in that city usually makes them say, well, we'd rather have affiliate ball than independent. But we can't be everywhere, so independent baseball is a role. Yeah.
And, what's the relationship between lawyers, agents, and managers when it comes to sports? Is there any kind of overlap?
Managers, on-field managers?
No. When you're representing a baseball player.
Okay.
What's the relationship between managers, agents, and lawyers?
I'm not sure I understand.
What I mean is, I took entertainment law, and if you are the person's lawyer, you can only represent them.
Oh, you mean like a talent manager?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But you cannot suddenly start representing them as an agent. You will be breaking the ethical rules. And I was wondering, is there anything similar to that when it comes to sports law?
Yeah, it's the same sort of considerations. And a lot of the baseball player agents who are lawyers never take the bar because they don't want to be beholden to the bar rules. If they want to walk a little more fine gray area line, they don't want to be worrying about their bar membership.
You're talking about Drew Rosenhaus.
But if you talk to guys from IMG or one of the big talent management agencies that represent players, actors, whoever, they manage a person's life. It's crazy. I've talked to people at IMG about they're representing Pete Sampras for somebody, and they're doing things like having somebody who goes to Pete's condo, opening all his mail, making sure all his bills are being paid, because he's on the road traveling to tournaments. So they are literally managing his life when he's on the road. So it's all encompassing. It's not just negotiate a contract, negotiate a sponsorship, appearance for Fritos or whatever it is. It is managing their life. It's really daunting and amazing all the things that they do. A lot of these guys don't have a dog. You go walk the guy's dog every day. You just never know. So it's pretty interesting. So how do you get a job in sports? Big question, right? As my example, I think, shows, if you're going to law school, and you get out, like you probably have a bunch of student loans. I had a bunch of student loans when I got out, so I never thought of, taking a beginning level internship job with a sports team at, $8 an hour and working my way up. Starting out at the bottom, working your way up. One way you can do that at a sports team. I don't think it's very practical if you have gone to law school, unless you're independently wealthy and have time on your hands. So the more practical way for a person who's been to law school, like me, like you, whether or not you take the bar, I want to become an agent, walk the gray area line. But the main thing is get out there, get to sports-related events. What happens when we post a job is we post a job and instantly I have 500 resumes. So you got a stack like this. So how do sports teams or leagues or sports we go through the stack and we look for, anything sports related that person's done. Maybe you played in college. Maybe you worked at the local golf tournament or tennis tournament. We're looking for anything that's sports related that shows you understand the business. And so we go through the stack of 500. We might have, move it down to a stack of 25. All people usually who have done, whether it's volunteering or something else, that shows that they understand the industry. And then we start working from that stack. But the key to getting a sports job is getting out of the big stack into the small stack. So that's why you want to look for things like volunteering for a local golf tournament. You work in a hospitality tent. But it's something to put on the resume for sports organizations to see you understand event planning and things like that. So that's one way. Another way is just go out there and be a good lawyer. I had no thought that I would ever work in sports. I was just doing labor employment law for a good little labor boutique firm in Cincinnati, representing companies like Kroger and Georgia Pacific and Fort Daniel and people like that doing work. But keeping up with my network of people who I gone to law school with. That's why I found out about this. As part of that, you need to think about what you study while you're here, and what you do afterwards, because there's certain areas that are going to be an easier way to get into sports. Labor is always a good one. If you do something labor law related, and that's because for every sports league, their most important contract is with their players. That drives everything else, because that's the big expense. So, at least some knowledge of labor issues is helpful. For sports leagues other than baseball, antitrust is important. Baseball has an exemption from the antitrust laws, but antitrust is another way that a lot of people have come to work for sports organizations. Paul Tagliabue, the former commissioner of the NFL, was a labor lawyer, or an antitrust lawyer at the NFL's outside firm before they hired him to be the commissioner. Antitrust is a good one just because those are incredibly complex and important cases when they come up. The collusion cases where the NFL players say that the NFL teams all got together and decided they were going to pull down the market for free agents. If you lose one of those cases, the damages are in the billions. Antitrust is another good area. The other good area is intellectual property, and this is growing more and more, especially with everybody trying to move ticket sales and everything to mobile. So intellectual property issues are all over the place. It's gotten so easy for you to do a Google search and grab a team image and paste it on something. So that used to be much harder to do. But those sorts of issues, intellectual property, because that has ramifications for licensing content, digital, video, those sorts of things. All sorts of interesting issues. What if fans show up and broadcast part of your game on Periscope? Things like that. There's all sorts of emerging technological issues. So to the extent you have some understanding of and appreciation for intellectual property issues, that's really useful. Those are the three big areas, I think, that are really useful for someone looking to get into sports. The other thing to think about is there are thousands and thousands of sports jobs where you don't work for a sports team or a sports league. Just thousands of them. We did a big sponsorship with Bank of America in the roughly mid-2000s. And Bank of America had an employee whose job was to travel around the country to all different events that Bank of America is a sponsor at. So one weekend he might be at a NASCAR race in Darlington. Next week he might be at a AAA baseball game. he worked for Bank of America, but his job was to travel around the country to sporting events to make sure that Bank of America was getting what they were supposed to under their sponsorship agreements.
That's like a great job.
There's tons of jobs like that out there. It's crazy. When you think about sports jobs, don't keep your focus too narrow. Broaden it to include jobs like that. You wouldn't think, I'm going to go work for Bank of America. I'm going to be doing sports. But there's all sorts of organizations, Pepsi, Coke, who, think about it, you see their sponsorships Ford, all sorts of people in brand management who are actually doing the sports stuff, doing contracts with sports leagues and sports teams. And there's a lot of good opportunity now in the social media side, because everybody's trying to create this authentic experience where fans are engaged with the brand. There's all this marketing speak. This is why we went to law school, so we didn't deal with marketing speak. Then you get out and you feel that, and you find out you have to deal with marketing speak every day. You have to deal with marketing people who are coming with their latest crazy ideas. You're at a point where if you can make yourself familiar with ins and outs of marketing with Instagram, Snapchat, and whatever's next, there's a lot of opportunities out there because there's a lot of demand at companies who have people there who don't understand those things who say, we need to be marketing on Instagram. How do I do that? So if you can build those skills, those are things that combined with your law degree, you can say, yeah, we can do that, and here's who we need to do a license agreement with. There's all sorts of ways to show value to an organization in a sports-related job that you might not think of as a sports job.
With regarding what you were saying about like the stack of resumes and how you sift through them. Let's say if you're patent bar eligible, would you recommend writing that on your resume if you're applying for like a sports law job?
Sure, absolutely.
Like, would that be one of the factors that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that it makes you a little different.
Yeah.
And might catch somebody's eye. You never know when they're going through what is going to resonate with them. I had an intern work for me who used to work for the Daytona Cubs, did an internship with them, and he prominently put in his little section on Daytona Cubs, intern doing yada yada, and pulled tarp. He put that in on his resume, but it showed, he was willing to roll up his sleeves and dig in. That's the other great thing about sports organizations. They're not like big law firms that say, oh, we only hire the 10% of people. They want people who are just going to show up and work hard. So there's less obsession over grades and that sort of stuff, because they just want people who understand the business and work hard. So which is one of the things I like. And the other nice thing about sports organizations is you have all these team owners who made a bunch of money doing whatever. They had a trucking company or something. When it comes to the sports stuff, that's the fun thing for them. So the general environment around sports is happier. That's their fun thing. They don't want to lose money because most of these people don't tell me I lost any money. But this is the toy. This is the hobby. So the general work environment around sports, still work hard, stressful sometimes, all those sorts of things. You could be doing the same thing you're doing in sports. It's just more enjoyable by the context of what's going on around it. Because at the end of the day, you're working on contracts and other stuff, but the product is still the game. So that's the thing I probably like best. That and not having to record my life in 6-minute increments anymore. Any other questions? Yeah.
Going back to the stack of resumes question, how important do you think your experience with a specific sport is? So, like, for example, I was a former college athlete.
Okay.
I have interned with Rutgers Sports, but I might be interested in that, obviously, as different sport like football, baseball, for example? How important do you think experiences with, you know, specific sports?
For me, the fact that you just have, you know, any relevant sports experience is more important than it being baseball. And actually, another good tip for you, never go into an interview or do a phone interview where you say, oh, I'm a big fan. They don't want to hear that. They want a good worker. So they want to hear about, you know, how you understand, you know, maybe current events going on. And I was talking to Andrew earlier. There's an organization called the Sports Lawyers Association, and there's also the Entertainment and Sports Law Society of Florida Bar that's really good. But the Sports Lawyers Association was actually started in Florida by a lawyer named John Wendell from Lakeland. It's grown into a very, you know, interesting and impressive way for lawyers to network. And every year they put on a big sports law conference. The most recent one was out in Los Angeles, out live. But you go to that conference, and in, you know, over a couple of days, you hear about all of the, you know, emerging issues in sports. You know, everything that's, you know, sort of cutting edge, and that teams and leagues and labor unions and everybody else are wrestling with. So it's a really great way in, you know, a short amount of time to get up to speed on all the current issues. Because sitting in an interview, you know, if somebody sits in, you know, I'm interviewing somebody and they say, yeah, I saw the latest ruling in the Senate lawsuit. You know, where do you think it goes from here? It shows that, you know, they're, you know, in tune with, you know, important trends in the industry. So that's another thing that you can do that will help you, you know, when you get to that point, when you either have an initial phone interview or have an in-person interview, to show that you know what's going on in the industry and that you're engaged. And that's not, I'm a big fan, because, you know, they're looking for somebody who, you know, is sharp and is on top of stuff. Okay.
Are you concerned about the heading for our society into completely paperless, as far as contracting and things of that nature go, including like smart contracts and blockchain, if that's going to have an effect on minor league and Major League Baseball?
No, I think it'll all be fine.
Work seamlessly and perfectly?
Yeah, I mean, and the biggest thing is always going to be data security.
Yeah.
As anybody who has a Yahoo account knows. Any questions? Yes.
I don't know if you answered this earlier, but when they loan you the players, you know, like the Major League Baseball controls it, do they also handle all the drug testing for like steroids and things like that? Or
They do. So Major League Baseball works with a company called Drug Free Sport, and the minor leagues actually had a drug testing plan for the major leagues because they had to negotiate with the Major League Players Union to put in place at the Major League level. And the minor leagues around 2000 they had to start testing everybody. And the minor league drug testing plan has always been more stringent than the major league plan because, you know, they have to fight with the union about every time they want to add a drug to the list at the major league level. At the minor league level, they just add it. Yes, they have one. We also use Drug Free Sport ourselves for drug testing of the umpires. Not that it's you know, a huge concern, but it was one of those things where, you know, if we were called in front of Congress with Major League Baseball, you know, who's looking into drugs, we didn't want Congress to say, well, do you have a drug testing plan for your umpires? And we're like, no. Any other questions? Well, great. We've been a very engaged audience. Thank you.